Hi everyone, today we got an absolutely nothing day here at these kind of zone of resistance areas, and that is absolutely not what you want to see, right? This is kind of a consolidation. Certainly could be, I guess, a pullback in time. We wait for things to kind of catch up. As long as this continues to consolidate, we could get the continuation higher. It's certainly not impossible, but does kind of look like we might be setting up for a little bit of a pullback. Is it a pullback to a higher low? Is it a bigger fall here to this kind of zone here? Let's take a look at all of the charts and see what makes sense for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got General Motors earnings. We did get Netflix earnings, but that was less interesting to me. General Motors popping 15% on a beat and raise on guidance is super big for me. I think this is indicating that the economy is still really strong. People still have money. People are still buying, and this has been massive, right? You got GM coming on its second best day since emerging from bankruptcy in 2009. That's massive. I think this company is doing really well. They have good margins. I still think they face some issues with tariffs. We don't really know exactly what that looks like all the way, in my opinion, but really good. $2.80 versus $2.31. Revenues also beating, adjusted EBITDA beating by quite a lot. Third quarter revenue, $48.59 billion, down less than 1% from the same period last year, but their earnings did beat on that, so they are improving their margins and doing well here, and you can see what this looks like. It's been a really solid run since the April lows, $45 up to $66. Is it worth that? Who knows? But you have a ton of investors saying this is a company that's worth looking into, and this for me is kind of a bellwether when it comes to the auto industry. Again, like I said, tariff concerns, still concerned about that a little bit. EV impact, they say this adjustment did not include those special charges reported by the automaker for EVs, but overall, really good result. Want to see if this correlates with any of the other autos this earnings season. Moving over to fear and greed, we got a 29 from a 30, so a slight step down, kind of curling down there. You can see it on the indicator. Momentum still neutral, makes sense, no movement there. Strength did continue to go lower. Breadth, we'll see what that looks like. Relatively flat for today, slight uptick. Put call ratio just continues to go higher. Interesting to see that continuing to climb, still extreme fear there. Volatility came down, makes sense. Markets did not move really at all today. Safe haven demand, still extreme fear, still flatlining there. And then junk bonds, still extreme fear, and that's starting to curl up just a little bit. Moving over to earnings here, you can see Netflix missing on the bottom line pretty heavily, over $1 miss there. They cited some issues with Brazil and some agreements there. We'll see if investors care at all about that. Everybody else still doing really well. Texas Instruments missing by just a little bit. And like I said, GM, absolutely massive beat here. And then looking at tomorrow, we have Tesla, IBM, Thermo Fisher, AT&T, obviously the heavy hitters. Got Hilton in there, another one of those kind of discretionary style companies. Be interesting to see what they're saying about the leisure side of the economy. And then for Thursday, T-Mobile, Intel, Union Pacific. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see we are right at that trend line, right at the overhead resistance, right at the highly traded zone, completely flat on the day. We also have that RSI. We talked about it yesterday. We came right to it. Still have not officially touched it, but this looks like the zone where there's probably going to be a little bit of selling. So we're going to be watching this one closely tomorrow. Talked about it yesterday. So far, looks like we're going to be finding a top. We'll see if we sell. Right in that consolidation of EMAs and SMAs on the hourly chart, everything has caught up. Pull back in time. You can see everything's consolidated, getting ready for likely a pullback in some capacity. Does it find support in here around kind of 668 or so in this kind of zone here? There's clearly going to be some buyers, in my opinion, in here. If that area breaks, then you're looking for the trend line down here around 662. And then if that area breaks, then you're kind of looking at this area here around 658. Those are the three zones to watch for, at least for now, in my opinion. And then looking at it here, you got that 21 EMA pretty much in the middle of this range here. So that gives you kind of a fallback in here, right around that trend line in here, when you kind of overlay those two charts. So keep that in mind, consolidation of EMAs and SMAs in that kind of 665 area. Either way, momentum here still looks okay. Clearly overhead resistance. Seems like this is going to be the continuation of this kind of potential topping pattern, left shoulder head. It's pretty canted, still a little bit higher right shoulder here. Didn't quite get to a double top yet. So you don't know necessarily, but just some things to keep in mind. Those patterns are still possible. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see we did get above that even previous ATR stop here at 669.80. We're right at the 8 EMA that's holding up 670.72. Want to see that hold in there if it's going to stay bullish here. Not a ton of volume, that's a little concerning. In terms of zones of support, you got a consolidation of EMAs in here, 665, 666 area, trailing stop 664.95, kind of in that same zone that we talked about, 665 area. Love to see it pull back, hold that zone, and then get the bigger continuation to that upper ATR band, which I still think is a possibility. That would give you kind of the 677.09 area as a target. And then looking at that hourly chart, we talked about it yesterday. We were extended, kind of expected some kind of pullback in time. So far, that's working out. And honestly, the fact that we didn't pull back too much does give me a little bit of hope. Maybe the structure is going to hold. Trailing stop right now on the hourly chart, 669.76. So not a ton of room for that pullback to get back into bearish conditions. The momentum obviously very, very flat there. And then looking at that daily chart, still watching that trailing stop all the way up in 678.64 area. That is the daily bearish condition. If we can get above that, then you're going to flip back to bullish, and then pretty much everything would be bullish at that point. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, very, very similar thesis, basically flat on the day, down just 16 cents, right at your all-time highs, right in that same zone that we were watching yesterday. We said this was probably going to be a zone, and we are still there. The low of that zone was kind of 611.71 area, kind of right at the bodies of those candles, and then the wick was the high around 613. Came into that zone pretty much all session, sold off a little bit, kind of the same setup. It's probably going to continue to sell here a little bit tomorrow. And then looking at those hourly charts, pretty much the same zones that you're looking for in here, 604 to kind of 607 area. The highs from this area, I would expect to come in there and see a little bit of support. Momentum is a little bearish right now. And then you also have consolidation of EMAs in there, 604 kind of to that 606 area. And then if that breaks, you're looking for the trend structure in here around 596.67 or so. And then you have the 21 and the 9 EMAs kind of VWAP hanging out in this same area, 601 to 603. So there should be some buyers in this area, definitely some buyers in that trend line area. But if we do come into this area and reject, that is going to be a pretty clean double top. That might give markets enough momentum to kind of push through this area and then look for that 55 EMA. If this zone breaks, that's your next level, 586.67. And then looking at that RSI, same as yesterday, we're right at it. Makes sense that markets stalled out in this area. Moving over to the NASDAQ, same thesis here on the daily chart, trailing stop all the way up at 620.86. Still not expecting to get above that level realistically. It's not impossible, but seems like we're stalling out right here. Seems like this is going to be kind of the culmination point. 4-hour chart, same thesis as the SPY, got above that trailing stop here briefly. That was 611.47, got above that. We're pretty much right there on the close, 611.41. After hours drifting a little bit lower, drifting below that 8 EMA. Looks like this is getting set to pull back here just a little bit. Trailing stop on the 4-hour, 604.06. And then looking at that hourly chart, hit that upper ATR band, pull back in time, allowing this stuff to catch up, allowing those ATR bands to give a little bit of room here. Did not get below the trailing stop, 609.98 on a closing basis. So far that has held up really, really well. Even if we pulled back a little bit more, if this kind of zone held up and we started to push back towards that upper band, that would be really, really bullish. Not sure that's going to happen, but it's not impossible that this does continue to flip a little bit more to the bull side. Target, like I said, would be kind of 614.50 or so. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell once again hitting that trend line, continues to be major overhead resistance. Tagged it again and sold off. Same setup on the RSI, continues to downtrend, could not get to the SMA and sold off a little bit. The difference here is the Dow. The Dow was absolutely massive today, up another 0.5%, a new all-time wick high, also new all-time close. Really, really strong on the Monday, continues to be really strong here on the Tuesday. Momentum flipping to bullish, RSI well above the SMA here. Looks like this is potentially going to push in here. Let's go ahead and extend this out somewhere in there. We didn't get to the trend line previously, and it really hasn't been super helpful recently, but if we could, maybe we could get in here between kind of 475, 477 in here, 480 potentially. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. You can see this trend line was built back here, marks kind of some tops in here. Certainly could see this probably adjusting down. Let's see what it would look like if we marked that top there. That looks a little bit more interesting. That would give you a target in here around 477, so pretty much in that same area that we just mentioned, but that would be the target. I think that's certainly possible over the next day or 2 days. Moving over to Mag 7. Mag 7 was down just 0.15 on the day, 50 cents on the day, came down and tagged that kind of bull flag type setup, found that zone and then bounced pretty good. So that to me says this is still relatively bullish here. Not going to freak out too much on the NASDAQ charts and the SPY charts, which don't look very good, but this looks pretty good. And if this can hold up and start to flip a little bit more aggressive to the bull side, that is going to definitely take markets with it here. So this is kind of a tick for the bull sides in my opinion. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple was up about 0.2, up about 50 cents, still holding right at that level that it was at from yesterday. Still a breakout to all-time highs, new all-time high wicks here in closes. Everything continues to be super bullish here for Apple. Can it continue to do it? Certainly seems possible. It is down just a smidgen after hours, but I wouldn't freak out. As long as 260.10 is held on a closing basis, this is going to be bullish for me. And then looking at Microsoft, still at that overhead trend line, still cannot seem to get through it, rejecting a little bit more after hours. If this sells here, then you're probably looking back for support at 506. And if that zone breaks, then you're looking at this kind of area down here between 493 and kind of 495. And then looking at the trend line on the SMA, for the RSI, you can see that same kind of setup, lower high setup right at the SMA. If it's going to reject, it's probably going to do it here. Moving over to NVIDIA and Tesla here. I was pretty bullish on Tesla and it gave a little bit of that back here today, down 1%. Might come back and kind of fill this area, maybe hit the 437 or so. Then we'll see what happens after that. We're right at the RSI as well. So the RSI SMA starting to reject a little bit from there. Maybe that's affecting a little bit more, kind of a lower high setup potential. I don't love it. I really liked the setup going into here. Looks a lot less good now today. It's going into earnings, of course. Don't forget that if you're trading this here. And then looking at NVIDIA, you have that same kind of 180 support. Came down, tagged that. That 55 EMA also in there, momentum bearish. 179.65 is that 55 EMA. This also looks relatively not great, right? If this zone breaks, this is going to go pretty quickly in my opinion. It's been a very long consolidation. Cannot seem to go any higher over the last several months. We've pulled back in time. 55 is caught up. If that goes, then your next dynamic support is all the way down here at 153. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for NVIDIA. Moving over to Meta and Alphabet. We've been watching these for potential setups here over the last couple of days, and I still think there's still a potential setup here. Meta broke out from the trend line yesterday, continued right up to the level 736.67. I think we could absolutely go there. And then 55 EMA would be that next overhead at 747.84. If we can get above that, then I think you have a potential play back up to these highs around 788. Certainly possible. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. Meta looks pretty good here now. After the break above the trend line, as long as this gets the continuation through here, will be good. And then looking at Alphabet, this looked really good the last 2 days, right? The kind of breakout, retest, continuation. Surprised to see it kind of gap down, come down, tag this level. Did find some buyers in there, so that's good. We're right at the SMA. If we can get back above that tomorrow and kind of get the continuation back to overbought conditions, that would be really strong. Still like this as a potential bull flag, but it's not moving quite as well as I would have hoped it would, considering how clean this setup was. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, you got a little bit more of a flip back to bullish here, with staples pulling back down about 0.5%. We hit that level, 79.90, pulled back here. It's still holding support, so this could be a breakout kind of test of resistance, pull back, resistance becomes support here, rally back up through to that next level. That would be a nice clean move, kind of a textbook move if it did play out that way. It certainly seems like it could at this point, but still, you have a little bit of a pullback there. We've had discretionaries. We said we got above the level yesterday, 235.85. If we got the continuation today, that would be pretty bullish, and then you'd be looking back for these kind of all-time highs around 242.50, 243 area. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. We're above this trend line here as well. Let's go ahead and extend that out. Kind of in that area, broke above that, we're above it. Everything looks pretty bullish here, kind of a risk on style day. We'll see if this continues into tomorrow and kind of through the earnings season. I think that's going to be interesting, but nice move here, good bullish, definitely risk on today. Moving over to Netflix, you can see that after hours move here, pretty dramatic move, down about 6%, but really we haven't taken out these lows from back here beginning of August time frame, beginning of October time frame. We're kind of right at those lows. This has been kind of a pullback in time. And you can see it here on the daily chart. Pullback, kind of choppy, very similar to kind of a Microsoft chart, if I'm being honest. You have kind of a peak level here, dip low, kind of consolidation sideways. Tried to dip low here, tested this low, bounced again, and now you can see that after hours price went from 1241 down to 1162. So in that after hours move, like I said, about 6% into this area here. We'll see if there's any follow through. Maybe it goes to the 200 there at 111, at 1111 in here. That could be interesting. Maybe this consolidates for a little bit longer, and then once this structure pulls back all the way, then we start to see a bigger sell. Something more similar to this, where you pull back to the 200, get a continuation, certainly possible. But if this consolidates and we get below it, then we're into much more bearish conditions. Moving over to General Motors here. I don't have anything on this chart. I don't really look at General Motors too often. I just kind of keep tabs on it, just for that kind of auto industry, just for that kind of broader economy feel in the back of my head here. But this is a pretty interesting chart, right? It's really, really sideways. You can go back all the way to say to basically inception, $35 back here in November of 2010, and we were all the way in that same spot here, February of 24, with some rallies and some dips, right? If you're in this zone, December of 21, peak areas around $65, pulled back. November of 23 down to $27. Any of these kind of lows here seems to be a buy, but now we are rallying back up. We're right at all-time highs. Remember, this company was reborn 2009 timeframe. Are we going to break out to new all-time highs? If so, where are we going? Throwing a real quick channel on there, if I had to say, you got some overhead resistance up here around 72.60 or so. Remember, this is the weekly chart. These are weekly candles, but you're right at this overhead resistance. If we can get through there, you're in price discovery, especially if you could get through here. Who knows where you could go? Moving over to breadth continues to improve here, up to 60.4. And then 50-day at 51.08. So breadth is actually doing a little bit better than I would have expected. 20-day hasn't hit that target yet. 68.14, we were above the level yesterday, looking for that touch of 68.14. Can we get through there to 86? That would be kind of bullish, honestly, if we could get there, kind of pull back, get a higher low setup, continuation back into that area. If 20-day stays high, that could give the 50-day room to kind of catch up here, which has been deteriorating really since mid-May. Pulled back to this area here, found some support. I'm not super convinced that this is a bottom yet. We've talked about it many, many times, definitely on the weekend video, that this could ultimately go down to like 26 or 22 before we see kind of a culmination style bottom. You can see it going much, much lower ultimately, potentially, but for now, we're still kind of in this slow grinding downtrend. Moving over to the dollar. Dollar continues to improve, right? We had a big bullish day Friday, continuation here Monday, continuation really nicely here through the Tuesday, continues to hold up. Would love to see this get back to that trend line and then back above it ultimately. Here, that's up at 99.43. Got the level here, 99.83. Still have this overhead 200 on the daily chart at 100.82. Momentum's back to bullish. RSI, we're kind of right there. Still slowly grinding higher just above the SMA. Want to see it get back into that area and continue this uptrend, which I still think is going to happen. But again, it's taking its time here. Still bullish on the setup. Low, higher low here, looking for a high, higher high. Moving over to bonds, J&K pulled back just a little bit, down 0.8. Nothing crazy. We're right at the 21 and VWAP here. We said this might be a zone of resistance. We were at it yesterday, touched it again and kind of sold off here today. TLT, on the other hand, continuing this massive run that we said it was going to do. Had the buy in here, so that was pretty bullish. We're going to see if we can get to that 92.82 level. Everything looks really, really clean for me here. I still think this will ultimately go to the 100 area. Just being patient on TLT. Everything looks really good here so far and continues to do so. Moving over to the VIX. The VIX did continue to pull back here through that 21. We closed below the level yesterday, 1850. We continued to fall here. 21 was at 1797. We're just barely below that, right? So we're going to come in here probably to that 55 EMA, in my opinion, 1641. Could certainly come into maybe the high of this consolidation, just a little bit lower, 1722, but I think we'll probably come down to the 55 in here, probably tag that 55 tomorrow. We'll see, do we get a bounce from there, or does this fall right back to that 1470 area? That is going to be the interesting thing, right? So be watching the VIX pretty closely tomorrow. Certainly a possibility for like a tag and spike, or do we come back in and kind of consolidate for a while before that next spike, potentially into the end of the year, maybe sometime early next year? Moving over to my accounts here, I didn't do anything on the day, no trades at all. Russell, same position, end of the week, 246 for $4 credit. We're still in the money there. It is falling just a little bit after hours, but not a whole lot. And then the Qs are actually falling a little bit more, down about $1.40 in the after hours. Still really well protected on this, down to 600 for tomorrow's expiration. So plenty of protection there for the Qs. Depending on what the structure looks like, I'll potentially roll this out for tomorrow, try to collect a little bit more credit and get back into a more positive position here. Either way though, if it sells off, I'm still profitable, down to 600, should be in good shape there. And then looking at TLT, continues to be bullish, of course, and that was obviously good for my position. And then looking at the dollar, continues to go, it's right at that position, it's almost in the money. I think this is going to go pretty good here over the next couple months. Only got 2 more months on this position, it's been a long-term position, but hopefully we can make some money on it. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of General Motors earnings. Do you think that is a bellwether for the economy, or is this unique to GM and they are improving their business that much? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.